So, hello, dear Francesca. Thank you for joining me at Symbiotic Futures. Dr. Francesca Ferrando is a philosopher of the posthuman and has a PhD in philosophy, an MA in gender studies, and she lectures globally and is a professor at New York University. She recently published a book titled The Art of Being Posthuman, the review of which can be found on Symbiotic Futures. So I wanted to take the conversation forward based on your latest publication. And I wanted to start off by asking some questions about posthumanism. So your book emphasizes posthumanism as a philosophy of life and as a practice of existence. Can you elaborate on how posthumanism can be a practical guide for navigating the challenges of the Anthropocene, global pandemics, and the rise of artificial intelligence?
First of all, Venya, thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you so much for your amazing work that you've been really nourishing for many years now. I am very honored to be here hosted by you and for the platform Symbiotic Future, which is very inspiring and brings a lot of food for thoughts, not just through words, but also through images. And I love your artwork as well. And yes, I believe that posthumanism has meaning at this age of our humankind, because it really allows us to navigate our brave new world. And when I talk about our brave new world, I really mean the world as it is in 2023, according to our current calendar. Not as it was 5,000 years ago or 1 million years ago, and not as it will be 5 years from now or 1 million years from now. Although, of course, time is not linear and all these ages are connected. I want to be fully present in who we are right now. And I believe if we are really honest and if we really want to know who we are right now, then we need to really understand the planet as it is. We need to embrace what is happening at the level of the species, at the level of the earth, at the level of the non-human species. And in that sense, posthumanism brings a lot of insights, a lot of help to navigate a different time. We are at a time where it is also defined as the sixth mass extinction, where thousands of species are getting extinct because of human actions and also beyond human actions. And this is when we have to realize that the mindset of the human as this species that is superior than other non-human species, which is called Anthropocentrism, this type of approach to existence. When I see one species as more intelligent, more evolved, more important than others, is not really suiting us anymore. It might have suited us at other times, maybe when the humans were at risk of extinction and we needed that boost of energy to feel, no, we are important, it is relevant that we survive, for instance, the ice ages. But I believe that this mindset, right now, it is one of the cause of what could bring us to the end of the species, to what you could define as mass suicide. And I believe so because if you think, for instance, of one of the reasons why a lot of humans are actually getting diseased and dying in the 21st century, a lot of these causes are anthropogenic, are caused by, for instance, human pollution, and are caused by this misunderstanding of the human in a complete separation from all that surrounds us. And this understanding is really misleading because I am not separate from the environment that I am part of. And when I use the notion of part, I really like to place the P in parentheses and saying we are the art of something else. We are part of that as being part of that art of manifestation. And so in that sense, the air we breathe every day, if that air is polluted, we also get diseased. In fact, cancer is it really one of the main causes of disease in the 21st century. The food, if I eat food that is polluted, I'm going to be sick myself. If I am part of toxic relations, either with my families or in my society or with other nations, those toxic relations are going to affect my own health, my own emotional well-being. So when we start to realize who we really are, we start to see that we are this intraconnection of relations and manifestations that were always part as art of something much wider than us. And this doesn't dilute the self, doesn't mean that I don't exist anymore. It simply means that there is really no separation between myself and the whole dimensional realm. And we think of many different traditions, and I would say actually all tradition at the mystical level, I really believe all tradition at the mystical level see that. The complete reflection of the macro and the micro, of the inner and the outer, of even science tell us that everything is made of, they used to say atoms, and now we're talking about vibrating little loops of energy. So when we really start to understand ourselves in such big terms, we understand that we matter, that we are relevant, that we are not just a little drop in the infinite ocean of existence with no agency, that whatever we do creates the waves of the manifestation of this dimension. So in this sense, posthumanism on some level allow us not only to understand that our species is not in this complete separation from other species, but also to understand the species as this diversity that if you do not nourish, if you do not recognize, it's extinguishing itself. For a species to manifest, to exist as a species, you need diversity. Without that, it is again the end of the species. If there is too much inner generation within the species, there are going to be a lot of congenital diseases, a lot of genital diseases that eventually is going to bring the species to the end. So diversity is not something that we recognize just for some political correctness. I don't believe in some imposition of society to tell us what we need to do, but we need to understand that sometimes society tells us what we need because we are society. And we realize that if we are diminishing others, if we are crushing others because they don't look exactly like us, maybe they dress in a different way, or they speak a different language, or they worship some different divine entities. And if we crush that, we are really crushing part of who we are. The species, again, need diversity, need whole ontological creativity to manifest. And so the question is, do we want to go on as a species? Do we love this species? Why yes, why not? And if it is a not, why don't we love our species? Because we are part of the species. Of course, I'm talking about the human people who are seen as. There are going to be all kinds of algorithms involved, and that's something we're going to talk about in our conversation about technology, machine, all of that. But staying at the question of the species, the question is, what is it we don't love about it? And if there's something that we don't love, why we are not changing that? Because again, we are part of the species, we are manifesting as humans. And so I see the human as a process, as a fluid river, and of which we are all part. So the question is, why are we part of this? What do we manifest? What do we want to manifest with our lives? And yes, posthumanism, I believe it is one of the possible answers to navigate our brave new world. And that's why I believe it is at this point a vision of our species. I do no longer see as a small community people here and there that are really understanding posthumanism. I see posthumanism is really flourishing at so many levels that it is going beyond the intellectual communities, that is going beyond academia. And this gives me also a lot of serenity. I used to feel some years ago that I had to be very engaging with this and really giving a lot of my time to nourish this vision. I don't feel that anymore. I feel that I may need more time for myself, and the vision of the posthuman is happening. A lot of people all around the world are feeling this. And that's why the manifestation is already happening. It is becoming a mature manifestation that is walking on its own through our species at so many different levels. And that's when it becomes part of the collective consciousness. And when it's no longer just a tool to navigate, but really part of who we are becoming in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you just touched upon many different points, but it leads nicely on to my next question on existential posthumanism. You discussed the path of self-inquiry and self-discovery, but I would also want to touch this part to the concept of interbeing that you mentioned in your book that you draw on from Zen Buddhism. So how does all these aspects manifest in our daily lives, and how can recognizing our interconnections with other species contribute to this post-human enlightenment that you mentioned in your book?
Thank you so much, Venya. Yeah, so I would say, first of all, it's a question of where we are at with our life. And I'm not saying that there is one answer that is good for everyone. And I believe that the people who are going to be watching this conversation is because they are interested in these questions. And so they are open to receiving teachings, ideas, insights, questions, proposals. And I believe that if someone is watching this conversation, they are interested in the question of who we are as a species in the 21st century. And this answer, I believe, is bigger than a temporal answer, is bigger than a species answer, is probably reflects the beginning of manifesting. So when we're thinking about manifesting in any possible dimension you can think, I personally don't see this as the only possible dimension. Even science talk about the multiverse. There are possibilities out there that maybe are not exactly the reality that we are experiencing. And even this reality, it is still based on the perspective of the witness. So my perception right now, I am looking at the camera and I am seeing you and I'm seeing everything around the camera, and I even seen the outdoors through the window. And what you're seeing right now based in Amsterdam is myself, this computer in your room, and if you have some window, you're going to see Amsterdam outside. So even this moment is unfolding through the petals of all our experiences. And our algorithms that are working for, to make this Zoom meeting happen, that experience is still something that is related, but it's still unique. So I see really as the possibility of manifestation coming always from a perspective, which is the reason of why do we exist. It is to experience. It is to be exactly where we are at. So when we look at the possibility of dimensional revealing, we see that there is no such thing as one person or one being manifesting. Even if you tell me, well, you could think of this dimension as one, even that answer will be still many, because even this dimension is made of all these multiplicities of rocks and mountains and the technosphere and humanity and all that has come before us and all that is going to come after us until the end of the cycle of this universe. And maybe the beginning of the next cycle. Think of the yugas, for instance, in Hindu cosmology. So I would say that, and this is, of course, as a term, come from a great enlightened master, who was based in the tradition of Zen Buddhism, Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently departed from this dimension. He died in 2022. And he coined this term that I find it really enlightening, is the notion of interbeing. So the question, more than to be or not to be, is we inter-are. We are always interbeing. So the examples that we were bringing before, the air that we need in order to be here as human beings. For instance, if I'm thinking of my computer right now, my computer at the moment, the way it is manifesting, needs electricity to be part of this conversation. If you think of this planet, it needs the relation to the sun and the relation to the constellation of other planets to move in a specific way. So if you start to look at that, there is always a transformation that is related to all these elements that we don't even often consider as part of the self, but they are necessary to who we are. And I would go even more into biology, just being myself embodied right now as a human being. And I would think, for instance, of all the micro life, all the micro guts, all the micro bodies that live, for instance, in my guts, in my brain, and that allow me to be who I am, that allow me to be healthy or not healthy. There is a lot of study done at the genetic level, and even the notion of DNA is changing. Right now we're talking about the whole genome. So the DNA constellation of human and non-human beings that are part of our human body. So for instance, all the microbiome that is not only based on our guts, but it's really everywhere in our body. So we literally are multiverses. Just our body is a multiverse itself. And I believe that these notions can help us not only to understand better ourselves at the ecological level or at the biological level to be healthy ourselves, but also the existential level. Because if we start to see ourselves as interbeing, as always part of wider relations, then we understand that our own well-being is not just something that is closed in a shell, but can only manifest through the well-being of everything else around us. So for instance, if we are nourishing toxic relationship with our partners or our families or our society, that goes back to us. And it gives us anger and nostalgia and feeling of not being in harmony. So it is really a wider perspective. And I believe that to achieve that dimensional balance is not enough to work at the level, for instance, of our small communities or our small nations or our small species, but really looking ourselves beyond that and really seeing ourselves as part of everything. So in that sense, the way I am walking to work, it matters. If I am, walking and I am not considering my walk, I might bump into someone and give them something that they don't need in that moment. Or if I am eating my food in a very anxious way, I am not digesting it right and I'm not giving that experience to that food that becoming part of us. So if we see everything is constantly becoming, what are we manifesting? I also would like to say that there is no judgment in this. And if I am not ready to maybe consider everything part of me, and I am in the game of rushing, that is a game that I am possibly can play. But again, it is a game that eventually is going to give imbalance and disease not only to myself, but to everyone surrounding us. And I believe that as a species, we are playing the game of an imbalance. I don't want to generalize. I know that there are super mindful communities within the human species. And I believe that the human species has been super mindful for at least 99% of our time in this, on this planet. I believe that we would not be here if we were not balanced. And I think that there is a lot that we can learn from our ancient times. And 99% of our time, through the Paleolithic time, all the way to the Neolithic time, we had to be at balance with our environments. And I like this example a lot because when we were living nomadic life, which was literally 99% of our life as a species, if we went to a place and if we harvest all the plants in that space and then we came back 6 months later, there would be no plants and we would not be able to survive. When humans started to, for instance, hunt, because a lot of the time we mostly lived on more of a vegetarian diet. But when we started to hunt, if we would kill all the animals, then there would be not enough of those animals when we came back. And so there was always a balance of the human understanding them as part of the whole realm. And I also think that when humans became hunters, I really like to look at the artwork of the ancient times before the beginning of writing, because I believe that is the way that humans would give each other knowledge and would share knowledge even beyond the human species. A lot of these cave paintings are in places that are not accessible, are really down into the earth. And it's very interesting how these humans would portray, for instance, the deer that they would eventually hunt. And there was this complete knowledge of the animal. And there was this complete respect, because those humans knew that that animal that was eventually going to be sacrificed would become part of their bodies. Their beliefs were very shamanistic at the time. And so the knowledge of eating something, it was very related to the knowledge of becoming that energy. So if you kill an animal with anger, that animal, or with fear, that anger will become part of you. And in shamanistic society, that is very clear. So you, for instance, ask permission to a plant to become part of you. Think, for instance, of a lot of ceremonies. Think of, for instance, ayahuasca ceremonies for instance, Latin American societies, where you ask permission to the plant to give you the teachings, you ask permission to the plant to be ingested. So I think this respect and this dignity of non-human otherness is what has given us, our species, such a long span. A lot of other species got extinct, and I cannot talk for all of these species, but I believe one of the reasons why we're still around is not because we are in the Anthropocene. I think the Anthropocene is getting us to the end of the species if we don't change our habits. But I believe that the reason why we survived for such a major shifts, for instance, climate changes during the ice ages, where humans got so close to get extinct. And I believe one of the reasons is not only communication, which is true. One of the reasons, scientifically speaking, that is given for the human to still be around after, for instance, the ice age, is because we were able to communicate beyond the tribe. So we were able to communicate beyond the family, beyond the tribe, at a really wide span. And I think this is the rise of the internet. The internet is the manifestation of us being very good at communicating. But I believe that this communication has never been done just for humans and through humans. And this is a very anthropocentric understanding of communication. And I believe that, especially again, if you think of when there was no separation between the human and nature, and this separation comes later on with urbanization and with the beginning of so-called civilization, that I'm not judging, but it is an evolutionary possibility within the human. But before that, the human were part of the whole natural cycle. And so in that sense, I think that our longevity as a species was this deep understanding of non-duality, of non-separation, that is still at the core of major religions and major understanding. And I would really understand of all the understanding of any kind of spiritual understanding of all beliefs right now in human societies. And I've really been studying as many mystical traditions you can think of. They come from Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and at the end they all say the same, from Sufism to Hindu mystics, to Zen Buddhism, to Christian mystics, that there is no separation between God and us, between one and many, between the macro and the micro. And this belief, I don't believe can just be reached through this moment of enlightenment. I think it's part of who we are. It is really part of our DNA, because DNA is the memory of the planet. And the planet is that sense of non-duality. And we know that. We were part of the body of another human, of our mother. We were one and two when we were in our bellies. That's how we came out to become who we are. So I think that is part of our inner knowledge that is always going to be with us. So there is no need to search for that. It's already part of who we are. And the question is, are we ready for the knowledge to be part of us again? Or maybe we want to play the game of ignorance, the game of avidya in the Hindu Sanskrit, which is a possible game. Until when, though? And that is a personal question. It is a personal question, it's also a social question, it is a species question. And so going back to your answer, it is a path of non-dualism based on the understanding that many of us have been culturally educated in societies that have been made of dualism a tool. And I believe that this tool is, at this point, is a double-edged sword, and we can really, it can really cut our own understanding of the self. I don't necessarily say that we can, or that we have to get rid of dualism. There are interesting ways of looking at dualism. For instance, an example that I like to bring is always the understanding of the Tao, where the dualism is a wave, is a shifting type of separation that is not a complete separation. If you look at for instance, the image of the Tao, the separation between the two parts is not a straight line, but is like a wave. And in fact, in Taoism, and if you look at the major text in the Tao Te Ching, which is an incredible source of wisdom, the main metaphor for the Tao is water. Mm-hmm. And water is the metaphor for the Tao because it's this shifting process. Water can be snow, can be ice, can be vapor, can be liquid, is constantly shifting and rearranging, and it is the strongest element because it's fluid. So in that sense, I don't believe that we necessarily have to get rid of dualism as an understanding. Personally, I don't find myself really enriched by the notion of dualism. I never thought of two as enough for me. I like more maybe the notion of the rainbow, the multiplicity of colors in one being. The rainbow is one, but needs all these colors to be a rainbow. So two to me is not enough. I believe more the infinity symbol, it's more what represents my perception, and it's also good to think of the infinity symbol as a symbol of the DNA itself. But there are many ways to look at it. Although I believe that at the educational practice, I think that we really can get rid of a lot of dualistic examples, a lot of dualistic praxis, and a lot of dualistic teachings that are still given to young minds. And being a mother of a 6-year-old, I am very grateful to the educational system. She's going to public school and they're doing an amazing job. And still I believe that in many way of teachings, not only here in the US in the public school, but I see in India, in Italy, in China, a lot of these teachings are still based on teaching kids, for instance, the notion of being in separation. Are you female? Are you male? Are you Indian or are you Italian? Are you white or are you black? And yes, I understand that this notion can still be taught to understand where our society still is at, but not as foundational praxis, not as foundational notions. And they should be deconstructed. They should be revitalized, open, and not given as major pillars, because they create a lot of anxiety. They create a lot of violence, especially when children get a little older, and then they take this too seriously. Children still like to play, so they can play around with the notion of being girls or boys, and they can still play with pink or blue. But then later on, when they become teens and they start to really clench to these notions. And then when I see a lot of gender violence, and a lot of this gender violence, and this is scientific study, is based, for instance, of notions that were given to younger kids, for instance, with separation in playfulness. So boys play with boys and girls play with girls. And this idea of separation allow later on someone to think, oh, but this person is less or is more than me. I can beat this person. I can even kill this person because this person is less than me. And of course, this we can see with racism or ethnocentrism or hate based on religion or ethnic cleansing. So really would take this notion much more seriously when we just give them to children like, oh, it's okay to categorize yourself. Maybe it's not okay to categorize yourself yet when you're a child. Wait for them to categorize if they need to categorize them at all. And I believe that maybe we don't need to categorize ourselves. Maybe we need to know that there are some categories that we can play around and that we can, fluidly give ourselves for our doctor to know if we are, embodied in a female or male bodies, etc., but don't take them too seriously. Because when we take them too seriously, then we see a lot of issues that we're really playing as a society of major biases and major discrimination that I believe become a disease. I believe become species diseases. We think a lot of our own diseases. Do you have shingles? Do you have COVID? Do you have cancer? We categorize those as diseases, but we don't categorize racism as a disease, sexism as a disease. They are, because they kill people. Gender violence is a real thing. Rape is a real thing. Race hate, hate based on race is a real thing. It kills people. So we need to categorize this as a species disease or social disease. Maybe not all societies have all of them, but as a social, and then we need to heal. How can we heal them at the social level? And that's when I see that education is a major tool, not only of healing people, but also of disease, easing people, and also of diseasing people without a slash, really creating these diseases in social beings. And so I think that as educators, and I know that you're also part of academia, we have a major role. I take our role very seriously. That's why in my case, I am in this field. And I really see the role that we have, and also the role that we can play in letting people understand more our role, our agency in our species. And also, I would say we probably need to be much more mindful of what we teach, how we teach, and all of the things that we give for granted. And really allow our students not to just take teachings, any teaching, even the highest teaching, nothing for granted. Being able to question everything and anything, and being there for those questions. Not necessarily to give answers, but allowing the space for discussion, because everything is constantly changing and everyone has different answers, and we don't have always the answers, especially because our own self is maybe different from someone who is growing up in a different planet and experiencing different things. So allowing their voices to really to be heard. And so I believe that in education, we probably need more practice of giving workshops to allow students to talk. And of course, giving teachings. But no teachings and no teacher should be taken as the ultimate guru. Because the ultimate guru is the inner guru, because the inner guru knows where we are at and what we need. And there is no one else outside of us, no parents, no teacher, no religious master that can know exactly what we need and where we are at in our lives. Only our inner guru. And so giving space for that voice to be heard is necessary. And I believe that is something that we probably need to implement more at all levels, from elementary school to secondary school to higher school and to academia.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. Those were a lot of points that you raised on non-duality and duality. But at the end, I think the main takeaway point is it's always harmful to categorize and make divisions, but at the same time, difference is always important as long as they're not hierarchical.